What I feel in the astral is that there is no condition. We are perfect beings, and we have issues recognizing that. The main distinction between the astral experience and the experience of 3D is that you go into realities that are far more real than what we're in now. It's like an uber reality. I think a brilliant teacher is the mainstream, because the mainstream is like a mirror. Left is right, right is left. It's the opposite of what we are. So the mainstream teaches us what is not. We're caught in murky waters and we don't even know it.
The episode you're about to watch has been republished. My podcast channel reaches a lot more people now, and there's certain episodes that have slipped under the radar, and I wanted to bring them up for your attention because I truly feel they are worth listening to. So please be sure to let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. And of course, let's continue to connect. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're listening and tuning in from. I love reading it. It's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this? And the other thing I want to say as well is find out where we are if you want to put your spiritual boots on and come and join us at one of our 5-day retreats or 1-day events around the world. Links are below as well if you want to find out more what we're up to. Much love from me. Enjoy. Beautiful. We're recording. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Guy.
I'm very excited to see where this conversation goes today. I believe this will be the first kind of conversation I've had in over 200 episodes in some of the things that you teach and going down. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes. And the way I always kick off the podcast, Greg, and it'll be no different today, is that if you were at an intimate dinner party right now and somebody asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say, look, I would say astral traveler, and that's going to be interesting. Also, the energy healing is fascinating. It's taking me to that. So I'd say astral traveler or energy healer.
Wow. What reaction do you get? It's like, because if you throw off the cuff, I do some astral traveling and I teach people.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did have one comment. It was quite funny, actually. I was kind of in the zone after having done a workshop, and I was strolling down the street just a couple of years ago and met a neighbour down the street who I'd never met before. And they were having a bit of a party, so come on in, and I was kind of in that sort of zone. And he asked me what I did, and I said exactly that. And he said, "So you're into that sort of shit, are you?" And I said, "Clearly." And it's just what was interesting was that, since kind of writing my book, it's been a few years now. I've kind of, when I first wrote this book about my experiences, it was like a coming out. And I thought, my main fear was, are people going to think I'm absolutely crackers, because I'm a pretty grounded person. I'm a normal person. Well, what's normal, Anyway, and it was so unfounded, these fears, because what I found is that just through this kind of authentic new dialogue that I'd found, and this kind of bizarre tangent that I started to go on, I just met the loveliest people, and I found that the charge, like if someone did ask me, like what I did, and they had a reaction, I just didn't get any charge. I just sort of was like, oh, that's okay. That's okay. If someone thinks that's a bit left field, that's their right. It didn't bother me,
Yeah, fantastic. It's strange when that happens, like coming out of the closet per se. I mean, it was the same for me when even putting this podcast in the spirituality section of iTunes. Initially I was like, geez, what are people going to think? And I know the rest of it doesn't care. And we'll get into your backstory in a minute because I'm fascinated. But you talked about running workshops as well for astral travel. Do people like walk in hoping they don't get seen because they're walking into this kind of way, or people just walking in, bring it on, let's go?
So what was the last bit of that question, Ali? Because it did cut out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So as people walk into your workshop, where are they at when it comes to exploring this?
I tell you,
are they itching?
They're everywhere. There's from those who say they have no idea to, that people have had experiences. So it's kind of, even at the very beginning, on that same theme of, that outing oneself, in the very beginning when people came into workshops, because I started doing them only because a few people had read my book, found out what I was doing, and said, "Can you teach it?" And I remember thinking, I don't know, we'll give it a crack. I remember the first few workshops, people to come in, and I kind of look at them really suspiciously, thinking, you know, and I didn't even ask the question, like, why would you go? Why are you here? Like, I look at them and go, who are you? Why would you go to an astral travel workshop? You know what? And I found that really, it's fascinating the amount of interest that's out there. I mean, I'd never heard of the subject before. I'm continually fascinated with those people who have tried to do it, who have like read books and like, where did that come from? I think that interest. So really, it's all walks of life, the kind of people, and a lot of it's just getting into, you know, meditation kind of techniques or kind of patterns that enable it to happen. Because in the end, it is a bit of a mystery, but it's just to get close to that mystery. And even if not everyone follows through with certain things, as you know, and not everyone will have that experience. But I find it always helps them just to kind of get into that lucid mindset, which is what it's all about. Getting into that lucid mind, that notion of, you know, body asleep, mind awake, which is the fascinating, pivotal thing of astral travel. You know.
How would you then describe what astral travel is? Because it can conjure up so many
Mm.
connotations, really.
You know, it's getting out of the body consciously. Now, there are different. What I found is there's a few subsets. There's what they call the OBE. What I find, what I call it, real time astral, is like if I get out of body like a ghost in this reality, which is amazing when you pop out of your body and you realize you're out of your body, and so you're literally walking through what they call probably the fourth dimension, or a dimension that's very close to this, but you're able to um, relate to certain beings in that, and plus you can also see the human 3D experience. Most of astral travel, I would say, is going into other realms, but the main distinction between the astral experience and the experience of 3D or even lucid dream is that you go into realities or realms or situations that are, or scenes that are far more real than what we're in now, and that's kind of the sticking point. You're in, like, there's more depth of color. You hear you can see behind you. You can. It's like an Uber reality, and it's also often accompanied with a very
Wow.
ecstatic sense of being. So there is this correlation to the ecstatic experience, which is in the astral experience as well. And you kind of know you're having it. It's kind of like a lot of people ask, "Did I have it? Did not have it?" You'll know. You'll know.
And is there a differentiation in terms of when you're having that experience in that reality, then to then coming back into our reality here? As in, does it feel dreamlike, or does it fade away, or is it like you say, it's
Yeah.
like, wow, I've had this experience, and
Yeah,
then of
that's
course,
a good question. I think that's the
yeah,
pivotal thing. I think we're having so many astral experiences. The thing about an astral experience it's really a remembered experience. So generally, you'll have this kind of profound happening, and you'll wake up straight after it. That's what I found. That's what I found happen. So when I've been out of body in this reality, what I call real time astral, and I watch what people are doing. A lot of people are wandering around like zombies, or you see their astral bodies come out of their physical bodies. It's quite bizarre to watch, kind of like a translucent version of their own body. And in the beginning, you know, I would try to wake people up. I'd try to pull them out. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't too cluey on the ethics of the situation at all. And I just wanted to see what kind of reaction I get from sleeping people. So it seems that everybody does go astral when we sleep. You need to go astral. That's where you kind of get all of these rejuvenative energies coming into you. The astral body is kind of like that capsule to get that energy, and then it relates it into the physical body. So like the chakras. I remember when I first got out early on, I met these people who called themselves guides, and a little bit like what you said about the notion of the spiritual podcast at the time, because I wasn't, you know, a new ager. And then I was thinking, what's going on here? Why are they calling themselves guides? This sounds very, but they were showing me, I remember this woman would show me the energy centers and the auras. And I hadn't been interested in those consciously. And so I found these energy centers actually correlated with the astral body. So it's kind of like we process energy through these energy centers, and these energy centers then process into our like endocrine system or into our physical body. So it's kind of like we need to go astral to be human. And I've pushed the envelope a couple of times. Well, like I deliberately would not allow myself to go astral for 2 nights. I remember early on. So what I meant was I really relaxed my body, because a lot of what I teach and what I do is this notion of really relaxing the body. And how far can you go? Like when you relax your body but stay conscious, how far can you go? And what I found was I spent a couple of nights with my mind awake all night. So I only had my presence up here, and my body was absolutely asleep. So 2 nights of that, and I felt great physically during the day, but I felt suicidal. It was like I hadn't touched base with a stream of energy that we require as humans to be content, to be happy, to be fulfilled. I felt absolutely destitute, not allowing myself to go astral. So we are all going astral, but really, getting back to your question, that the commonplace definition of astral is if you remember the experience. And so when you remember the experience, of course, then you can manifest certain scenarios or find certain information. That's really what the astral experience is.
Wow. Wow. And how did you end up then getting into this? Because I don't know whether it's because I live near Byron Bay and Mullumbimby, where these conversations tend to come up more often than I was when I was in Sydney. But um, it's like we were saying off air, it feels to becoming a more common occurrence or a conversation. It doesn't feel so taboo these days. But because I believe this was like 20, even 23, 24 years ago,
Yeah.
you mentioned when you first started having these experiences.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
correct?
1999 it started, I remember, in March. Yeah, well, look, it is interesting. I mean,
And what were you doing?
I was a classical musician living in Vienna, and look, if I look back, a lot of people have asked me, but what were you doing? What was your mindset? Why did that happen? If I look back at the time, I was always into meditation for physical and mental relaxation. That's something I've had since my 20s. I remember my mum. I was a very tense music student at the VCA in Melbourne, studying violin and composition and conducting and this kind of stuff, and ambitious, but just I loved the music, and anything institutionalized becomes a little bit tricky, and I'm not good in institutions. So I kind of wanted to walk away from that early on, and when I was studying it at tertiary level, and my mum gave me this book. She was great, and gave me this book by Ainsley Mears. He's an Australian, I think, psychiatrist or MD as well. Anyway, it was about meditation. I think the book was called Relief Without Drugs. I remember it was a very basic kind of book with like pictures of drugs on the front cover and just in capsules. It was just kind of really, and I remember just this, and he'd been to the East, and he basically went through the notion that, well, in the West, we might not want to be sitting squat. We might just want to sit on a chair and meditate. For me, it was really profound. Probably that and the astral experiences, probably the astral thing when it first started, probably most profound. But the meditation, when I'd feel it in my body, and I recognized I was always holding myself, and so I just became obsessed with relaxing my body and mind. I remember getting really sick at the time. This was in my early 20s, and I realized that I probably had to, because I was a very tense. I remember someone said, "Geez, Greg, you're tense." And I said, "Yeah, I know, I like it. I like it. I like to be tense." But but that had got me going. And then if I fast forward, that had been doing meditation on and off. Then in Vienna, I remember my mindset at the time when the astral experiences started was a little bit, I was looking at myself now, I was probably quite a naive kind of guy. I was in my 30s at that stage, but I'd always been kind of a naive sort of person. And I was a bit shocked, kind of, I don't know, it was a bit like, is that all there is? I remember thinking, looking at the world and looking at my experience of the world and thinking, really? Is that what it's about? Is it really about, such diplomacy and, getting on any prefer. You know, it was. I guess probably subconsciously I recognized there was a bit of a hollow in my existence, but it wasn't a particularly conscious thing. And then I went to a craniosacral person in Vienna that kind of kicked it, who also did energy healing. And I remember having a shoulder injury, and she said, look, she gave me a bit of, you know, she got rid of it. And I remember being really kind of irritated because she had that kind of, you know, airy-fairy kind of, yes, you had an energy block. And for some reason, I said, what do you mean energy block? You know, and I was pretty, you know, I was kind of thinking from the other side of the brain. I think, you said, yes, we're all humans, we have energy blocks. And so that really intrigued me. And I went back, and that was fascinating because it kind of reinvigorated my love of meditation and just feeling it in my body and just sort of thinking, this tension I'm carrying, it's not me. I just had this incredible feeling that this is not who I am. This is not what I am, you know. And then the astral thing kicked in the most kind of, you know, dramatic styles, very theatrical. This light following me around even after it first kicked into my forehead, and it was kind of, yeah, I couldn't, as you said before, I couldn't turn around, I couldn't turn back, and it was. I remember having a decision. I came back to Australia a few years later, and I started thinking, well, I'm really interested in consciousness, and then I thought, well, then I had a chance to go back to Europe for conducting or music. I just thought, do I want to spend my whole life studying the music thing, or do I want to go down the rabbit hole of consciousness? So it was kind of like the last opportunity to make a, you know, free will, you know, free will, because I was feeling like I had been hijacked by the astral experience early on. I loved it, but I also hated it at the beginning because I just couldn't ignore it. But it was hijacking me night after night after night after night, you know.
Wow. It did you then, when you like you talk about the hijacking and having those experiences, how did you cope with those experiences then? Was there people around that you could talk to? Was there support? Was it, or did you just feel like you were just falling apart, or were you excited? Like,
Bit of both, a bit of all of that, because I remember thinking, well, I remember vividly thinking, well, this is sensational, but what is normal reality then? Also, I did have a couple of friends, that particular energy healer who I'd gone to, she had become a friend, and I used to go a lot, and she'd be using my energy to channel like weird language, like it was weird, wacko stuff going on. And then I knew a psychotherapist who I'd started going to not long before that, after a kind of a breakup of relationship, and, you know, looking at patterns. And it was the first time I've spoken to someone about, you know, what it was all about. So I did have people to talk to on that level, who were into meditation stuff. And also my partner, who I'm now married to at the time, and she was very open. I'm lucky. I think some people don't always have that, but it was still difficult to come back into normal reality. And in fact, I did crave these altered states. I would come home from whatever I was doing in music, and I would just hit the floor and meditate to go into an astral state. So I remember my partner at the time, at the time she was concerned. I remember at one stage she said, look, you're not really present. You're not in this reality, are you? And I said, well, you know, why would I be? This is just so beautiful. You meet incredible music, incredible color, beings, you know, telepathizing with you on incredible things you have no idea of, and planets and aliens. And it was hilarious, really, looking back. So it was confusing, and you know, and I think if we fast forward to just a few years ago, I had an astral workshop here in Brisbane. I think Brisbane's becoming the epicenter of astral travel. And these Tibetan, they were actually not Tibetan, but they were into Tibetan Buddhism. They were monks. They came along to the workshop, which was really cool to hear the Buddhist perspective. And I remember one of them said to me, Greg, your life must be hell. And I thought, whoa, that's a statement. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you're going out like that and then coming back, this reality must be terrible. And I said, well, I thought about that. I remember it, and it did feel that way in the beginning. I really had issues coming to terms. I remember after the astral experiences started, I'd just start to say what was on my mind. Like I'd be in a situation where I should be far more diplomatic, and some voice would come over me, and I would railroad situations. My career would take a beating because I was just not, saying the right thing at the right time. And so getting back to what the monk had said, and I thought to myself, well, to be honest, I don't see this reality as robustly real as many do, because the astral experience, you really do, like one of my early experiences, I was shown my own death in this body. I experienced it. I didn't ask for it. I was, it was like I remember, yeah, it was really interesting. I went out of body, and sometimes I hear my own voice speak to me. So I call him my higher self, but not in that. It's my own voice from a perspective of higher consciousness. So he seems to know more about me, about things than I do, because he's able to get me out of body. And so this particular occasion was my own voice saying, I want to experience death, and my own death. And I remember the situation, I remember the room, I remember how it was, and I was drowning in blood and all this kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, okay, this is full. I knew I was astral. You can always retreat. You can go back to the physical body, but I felt this was something I had to experience. Years later, of course, I did a shamanic course and realized this is very much part of the shamanic tradition, the notion of experiencing death in the physical. But it was interesting, and so there were themes being thrown at me in the astral that I wouldn't have necessarily taken on. So there was that hijacked feeling, but it was like a quick track in many ways. And getting back to what the monk said, I guess because these realities are so much more real, more defined, more touch, more unified sense of being rather than separate senses. There's no verbal talk going on. Everything's telepathic. So if I were to talk to you in the astral, when you would ask me a question, I would answer according to the question you asked. So you would kind of pull out of me that relates to your question. So there's no effort on my behalf, and I would do the same. It's like a free flow thing. It's really interesting. So, I guess now looking back, my reality has changed so much. I've moved from doing things I didn't want to do to doing everything that I do want to do, and therefore I enjoy this reality much more than I did. So in many ways, it's matching that astral kind of sense, that feeling of ecstatic, manifestation, whatever you want to call it. So, but once again, this reality, not to denigrate it, I don't see it as real as these higher frequencies, because I know that we are all existing in these higher realities, and I feel, from my perspective, is that we're all trying to wake ourselves up. Like often I'll have lucid dreams, and I know in a lucid dream now that there's often a drama. I know now in a lucid dream, I don't try to control the drama. I actually let the drama go, because the drama is not real. It's not real. When I do that, if there's any kind of antagonist, or if I'm going to crash into like once I was driving a car, I became lucid, and I was going too fast around a corner, and I was about to crash. And I remember I said to my wife in the car, sorry, and I just let the car crash, but I stayed lucid. And I felt this incredible wave of bliss. And so this actually first started in the astral. This letting go. I remember I'd counted a few kind of what we would call antagonistic energies in the astral, and I kind of, you don't know how to get past them. You just do as you can, and you just do weird things, and you might swear at them, or you might put a finger in a cross, or it's quite bizarre what you do, But anyway, I just actually published that book, and I was concerned about this coming out concept. I was about to fly over this beautiful molten lake of silver in the astral, just beautiful, beautiful realms. And when I say beautiful, you feel really good. Your mind is very singular in the astral. It's not as distracted or occupied or encumbered. Anyway, and these two guys were behind me. I thought, this is interesting. I feel there's a kind of a negative thing going on here, and very real. I thought I could fly away, but I won't. And I confronted them, and they sort of came at me, and they said, oh, you're having your samsara moment, huh? And I remember thinking, I'll Google that. I don't know what samsara means. But as they came toward me and they kind of started to beat me, and I remember thinking, just let this happen. And they kind of started destroying me. And I remember I felt myself dissolve, but I felt this incredible bliss. And I thought, now that's interesting. So the next time I had a lucid dream and there's an antagonist, I would allow the antagonist to do what that antagonist does, but I'm not charged in the dream. And I also felt those waves of bliss. So I feel my higher self is doing the same thing with the astral, just like I, with my dream selves, are kind of wanting them to wake up to the reality of the non-drama, if you like. So too my higher self or higher aspects of myself is kind of knocking at my sort of crown in this reality, teaching me to be less and less reactive. So I suppose the astral experience, if I look at it in a nutshell, it's kind of taught me to be less reactive and less, it's less turbulent. It's a less turbulent life. Not necessarily, it's still a passionate life, but it's less real, I guess. It's less real in terms of, under attack.
Yeah. Wow. You've triggered so many possibilities of where to go with those questions there. There's a few things in there. But then if you're like, you talked about witnessing your own death, you talk about surrendering into the experience without the emotional charge. Do you find then by having, because, I've had quite a few of my own uh, experiences beyond my body. And one of the things I struggled with initially when meditating was the complete surrender into it and just trusting that, because I'm not accustomed to know anything else apart from my reality through my five senses of how I've been perceiving it for, a large portion of my life. So, but then, so I guess what I'm curious to know is then, is that surrender and those fears around death and things removed in this life now to allow you to live just more peacefully and joyfully because of those experiences?
Absolutely. That'd be the prime kind of realization, is you just lose that. And why does one lose it? You just do. I think it's hard to put it in an intellectual context, but like early on, I remember, I was raised a Catholic, and I hadn't really hadn't gone to church since I was a kid, but I never thought of past lives and stuff. That wasn't part of my vocab. And I remember early on, this was also an astral experience triggered by my higher self. So I would often go into this void, like I'd literally go into this dark space, and it's not negative. It's just a space of nothingness where I'm awake, but I know I'm out of my body. Generally happens before dawn, generally, not always. And I heard my own voice say, I want to see me. And I remember I just saw me as clear as day. It was like, absolute ultra high definition. There I am as I was at that particular time of my life. And then it was like a slideshow. The astral went off, and there's like a wind in the astral, and I got younger, became a baby, disappeared. Then I remember there was this old Chinese Mongolian guy looking right at me, and same thing, slideshow, got younger, disappeared. And then the eyes always stayed in the same place. And I remember there was this African medicine man with all this regalia. I remember it was very full on. I remember thinking, whoa, I might have bored here, because I got this guy, very intense guy, right in my face. And I didn't know at this stage what was going on. Once he was not so old, about in his 30s, then he got younger, baby gone. Then the next was, I never forget, it was this long-headed alien in the background, was also not of the earth. And this has been a constant theme of my astral experience, has been this non-earthly thing. And funny thing is, I'm not really into that stuff. I don't watch alien movies. But anyway, because a lot of it has I find it a bit of a negative vibe coming off it. So I'm just not into that. But what was interesting was, I remember pulling out of that going, whoa. And there was a voice saying intermission, and it was, what is accompanied a lot of my, it was like intermission, as in, yeah, you're going to have to come back though, buddy. A lot of the astral experiences, there is a humor with the whole thing, and it is a guided experience. But I came out of that, and I didn't know what had really gone on. This is a classic astral kind of way it works. A few days later, somebody I trusted, I mentioned this to them, this experience I had. And they said, that sounds like a past life regression. And I remember my whole body going like, but really full on, not just kind of, pins and needles or whatever, but really like in the astral, that astral buzzing. And I remember the next instant knowing that to be reality. Knowing that was, I'm seeing alternate lives, whether we call it past life or doesn't matter in terms of time frames, and for some reason that relieved me of a lot of my trauma. So to do with being human, to do with the notion of mortality, and for some reason I can't put an intellectual pin on it. For some reason, knowing that you are more than just this body takes a lot of anxiety out of the notion of not existing, because you can't not exist, or the notion of dying in the physical form. For some reason, it alleviates that. Can't say exactly why. It definitely does, though.
Why then do you think we are here? Like, because many times you've mentioned about your higher self, and I always kind of look at it like I don't know, in my mind I always see an iceberg, an upside down iceberg, though, where the small part is actually in physical form, and there's a much larger aspect of ourselves beyond this physical aspect. What do you think the human experience is then? Why are we here? Why do we struggle? Why do we have pain? Why do we have joy? All these emotions and everything.
It's curious, isn't it? I think that same Buddhist monk, I remember he said, well, from their point of view, to be human is to suffer, and I guess we transcend the suffering. So that's from a kind of a spiritual, intellectual viewpoint. I think it's true too. I think we're almost here to learn that suffering isn't real. And therefore that gets you into context of emotions and stuff, because I've often analyzed my mind when I come into physical. In the beginning, oh man, I was so disturbed because I feel this incredibly lucid, pinpoint, singular mind, right? And as I come into the physical, I'd feel all of in the beginning, you'd feel it like, like clapped around you, these like mortal fear, fear of loss, fear of wow. And I just come back into this clay that was heavy, and I think, what on earth? As to get to your question though, as like the dreamscape, like in the lucid dream, I feel I'm pulling these aspects of myself that have somehow forgotten themselves out of the dreams, out of the drama, like pulling them from murky water. And there's this clear surface. That's where I'm pulling them through. And I think our higher selves also are pulling us through. I think we've dived into the murky water, perhaps for an experience, and we've kind of forgotten that that's not necessarily it, and we've gotten entrenched in the drama. I think karma. I think the whole karmic machine is dead in the water once you see it. What I mean by that is this whole question gets to the notion of feelings and emotions, conditioned, unconditioned. I think as humans, like in the astral, if I once again analyzing my feelings there is this sense of benign love. There is this sense of you are loved, or you are loved even, but there's this sense of incredible unconditioned. So I think I look at the human experience, as little boys, little girls, be good, clean up your room, and I give you an ice cream. So energetically, I'm showing you my love if you do that. So we translate the unconditional into the conditional. So very much the karmic realms, I think life on earth is in 3D is very much based on condition. So we've translated, you, them, us, right? You're either with us or against us. That side. What side are you on? Make it clear what side you're on. So duality seems to be kind of this we think this ruling force. But I think, and most people, not everyone, but a lot of people are living lives doing things they don't want to do. They come home, they watch on the screen the drama, they dream drama. So they're kind of caught in this maelstrom of drama. And I think, yes, but, they're having a good life. Oh, they must have had this in their past life to get that, or they deserve that, or sort of this whole notion of crime and punishment is very much a karmic thing as well. I think what I feel in the astral is that there is none, that's all void. That's all void. There is no condition. We are perfect beings, and we have issues recognizing that. There's so many buts and what ifs and I shoulds, and I think we're here to realize to kind of wade ourselves out of the karmic washing wheel. We really believe we're beholden to this. So in many ways, it's a bit of a hoot, though. I think if one looks at it, like I do say to people in my courses now, I say, well, what's the worst case scenario with the astral experience? The ultimate astral experience, and I mean ultimate as in the last one, is death. So if we look at the worst case scenario, is that really so bad? And we live on, and I think that this reality is very much, the karmic machinery is there, prodding us all the time, getting a reaction out of our emotions. How can our emotions be triggered? I mean, I can't even listen to a news thing on the radio now, because it's interesting. Like if you look at it, you look at the ranking of what is going to be on the news, like there's the death first. That's always been, regardless of what era, it's always like somebody died or someone murdered. So that's immediately triggering that response. So I think a brilliant teacher is the mainstream, because the mainstream is like a mirror. Left is right, right is left. It's the opposite of what we are. So the mainstream teaches us what is not. So I think we're here to transcend karma, and I think we've been caught in karma somehow. I think also many of us have chosen to come down and help the situation. But I think ultimately we're kind of caught in murky waters and we don't even know it.
Yeah, we certainly do. Do you think then that, or do you ever question why these experiences started to happen to you in the first place without the exploration?
It's true. Look, I do. And many people ask that. I think there is a certain aspect of, ticking time bomb in the best sense, or a time capsule. I think that from past lives or from one's soul, the overarching soul journey that would have been planted in there. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do, I've kind of seen in the astral. So the astral is very preemptive. So I tend to think that you also move out of time in the astral. So I tend to think that, it's an exciting, I think being human is exciting. I think if we can manifest the reality we want, that's what it's all about. I think, why me? Why anyway? I mean, I can not know what is in someone else's mind. I don't know how anyone else operates. And looking back at my own story, I was always a bit of an outsider as a kid. Kind of primed for this experience in many ways. I remember when I was 18 months old, I was actually, knocked catatonic for 6 months by my stepfather, and I had a very violent upbringing as a child. Father and stepfather, a lot of physical abuse. So I would often, to survive, I probably cut out a bit. And then I remember, dramatic life, from tiger snake bite and being almost, being dead for 24 hours virtually when I was a kid, to being chased by sharks just south of Lennox Head many, many years ago, the first time I came back to Oz. I think, and I love the natural realms. I think, I just think it's so, the whole thing is a cosmic joke. I remember, as I said, I was quite a stressed person, and years ago, the funniest things happen with these astral experiences. I remember this little Buddha. I'll show you a picture of it. Like, this guy rocked up in my stomach, and I'm not a religious person. I'm not a Buddhist, but he was literally in my. I could see him there. I felt him, and someone would come and tell me the most. Like, before I came to Brisbane about 10 years ago, I was living in Spain, and in a social situation, in this Chiringuito on the beach, we're all having a drink, very social. These people didn't know what I did, and I was taking a bit of time out. I was writing my book at the time. Anyway, this woman comes up to me. It's a beautiful night on the beach, having a beer, whatever, and she tells me the most grotesque, suicidal situation, she attempted suicide she'd had, like out of nowhere, and she's talking to me, and this guy once again rocked up in my stomach, and he's always laughing. He's like, so whenever anyone comes with the drama at that stage of my life, I'd feel him shuddering. And I thought, and I started the belly laugh, and I just thought I couldn't stop. And she's looking at me horrified. Everyone around just horrified that Greg is doing a belly laugh when someone's telling them his most extreme. And then she started to laugh, and we all had a really good laugh, and nothing else was said. And I thought, well, that was kind of weird. And it's almost like having had such a dramatic childhood and being able to laugh at it, and then seeing the drama that people hold, it set me up nicely. But I think that can be for anyone. I think to be human is to experience trauma on a certain level. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So getting back to the emotional aspect, like even as an energy healer, what I like about it is using this experience to I think humans have a lot of emotions and they're caught there. And I think really getting down, if I were to put it in a nutshell, I think we're here to kind of dissolve the emotional body and get into the realm of just pure feelings for the sake of feelings, where like you feel this ecstatic sense, not because someone gave you the best chocolate ice cream in the world or because you got a great job. Do you know what I mean? But there's this sense of ecstasy for no reason. And that's how you feel in the astral, this sense of just beautiful beingness. And that doesn't mean to be lazy in this realm, but I think there is almost the path of least resistance in a spiritual sense, where you kind of just follow that, where you're pulled, and still the realm of doing. But I just think I've gone off topic. I'm sure.
Then no, that's okay. So much of it resonates. I mean, I find in my own journey, once I really started to be pulled by a vision from the heart, really, and actually allow that aspect of myself to guide me more, as I connected to it more, my life has become more joyful and simpler in some respects, and things tend to flow a lot more. Even over the last few years, there's been moments going, shit, this is really knocking me here. What am I going to do? But it always works out if I surrender into it and trust and take action from it.
It's so true. So true.
Which is incredible. Do you still often astral travel? Do you still do you do it every night, or is it something that you do once a week, or you've kind of explored it so much you kind of don't now? Does it leave you feeling tired the next day, or is it perfectly fine? Like, what happens for you?
That's a good question. I mean, it does leave you feeling a bit tired. You feel kind of wrapped but tired. I don't seek it as much as I do. It's a very conscious experience if I do. I find it's a different experience. Like before, it was very dramatic and lots of vibrations, a lot of people and lights and stuff. And now I'll find myself, I might just go out of body. So I generally let it happen. I'm kind of all about, I guess, if you like, embodying these other realms in the human experience. So even as I speak to you, as you're saying before, this heart-based, this heart-led experience, it's almost like I feel I'm watching myself talk to you right now. I'm kind of allowing that to flow. I'm not actually doing anything. You're just along for the ride, in the best sense, not in a cop-out sense, but you're just along for the ride. And like in the astral, the words that come out, I used to meet this crowd of beings, and it was hilarious. And it was a round table discussion. This went on night after night, the same scenario. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I remember it was very lofty and it was very beautiful, but I had no idea. All I could sense was the energy. It was like way above me. And I remember when it came my time to talk, feeling a bit nervous because they all looked at me. Out came this flow of incredibly lucid situation of humankind on Earth, about our use of the resources, about our use of sharing them, about how we treat our own. And it was so bizarre because I had no preparation in mind. They looked at me and the information flowed. It was just so bizarre. So more and more I'm thinking, the astral experience is to embody it. So I don't have that same craving. I let it happen. If there's something I may really want to experience, I will kind of ask for guidance, because a lot of it is a guided experience, which is good. So it's kind of, yeah, in answer to your question, I like kind of the stuff I'm doing in this reality, with energy and with lucid and with astral travel. I like teaching. I like to share it. I like to do my healing and stuff. So it's kind of like I like to bring it into other people's lives. So I just don't crave that experience as much. I know I'm doing it anyway, and often I will be out there flying people out who I don't even recognize. I'll be flying them over these incredible, because your sense of perspective in the astral, like that, there's no horizon, like, and but then sometimes people will contact me and say, "Oh, thanks for coming to take me on an astral flight," and I don't remember doing that. So it's a bit of a need to know basis, I think. I think it'd be exhausting if we were always conscious of what we're doing in the astral. Mm.
Yeah, incredible. And for people listening to this right now that might be going, you know what, that's all great, Greg, but geez, everything is physical. That's my reality. I have, it's like trying to smash a piece of concrete every time I go to meditate. It's like I'm not cutting through anything. This is just like, is it possible for everyone to do this if they choose to? Do you think?
Yeah, well, is it possible for everyone to be conscious they're doing it? Because everyone's doing it. Without the astral body precedes the physical
Yes.
body. So all the energies, it's actually a bit bigger than the physical body. I believe it is. It's a question of this notion, as you say, of surrender, like in meditation. A lot of people talk about they're a bit afraid to go that little extra step. So I think I believe it is. From what I've seen, people have experiences. They can do it. You can. I'm fascinated with the fact that we can manipulate it into happening. This is what I'm interested. That we can manipulate ourselves into remembering. So I think it's almost short circuiting. We've been programmed to think that you go to sleep, and really scientists don't know what's going on when we're asleep. But what happens? So we're kind of it's to short circuit that program of body and mind asleep at the same time. So that it's just a reprogramming that goes on.
Hmm. One last question on this topic. Well, is there anything to fear with learning this work? Because it can conjure up fears initially. It did for me
Yeah.
initially, until I started to experience
Yeah.
them. Um,
Look, I don't.
yeah.
I don't believe so. Look, I had all sorts of little monsters rocking up. I remember this hairy monster used to rock up at the end of the bed. It was really hilarious. It's like one of those Disney hairy monsters, and I used to just swear at it. And it's really funny. And occasionally, there's beings, but what I find is when they see them in the astral, if they're mischievous entities, if they know you see them, they are out of there. I mean, it is a very fluid realm. We are constantly um, in a relationship with other beings at all times. It's going on. It's actually going on right now. People are being impacted. So look, you bump your head, you injure yourself, you pay tax. I think these things are often more troubling than meeting an astral entity that, you know what I mean? So you just got to be prepared for. I just wouldn't pay too much homage to a lot of the emotional vibes that come out of these movies about it. They're often really scary and negative, movies to do with this kind of stuff. It's not like that. There is a humor involved. There is a guidance. There is a love involved. So I would suggest to anyone, unless you're on very heavy antipsychotic medication, I think you just go for it. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And what do you hold for the future? I mean, where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years with your work? Because I know you do energy
Yeah.
healing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And I like the astral stuff. Well, that's a good question. I like the idea of appearing in a room in a non-localized. What I mean by that is kind of doing some weird, like playing with the astral as well. Like I kid you not, this sounds really wacko, and it's absolutely okay for people not to believe it. I wouldn't believe it if someone told me, but I once actually in the physical had an astral experience and actually lifted off the ground. It was so cool. And what was really
your physical body lifted off the ground.
And what was so weird was it was like my higher self was saying this kind of chant that it was really out there. But look, who knows? For me, I just you kind of just let it happen. You know, I like the fact that energy healing is a concrete thing I can actually do in this reality. Like what I'm looking for is to do things that relate, energetic things that you can actually, you know, purpose to this reality. So I think that I just enjoy doing what I'm doing. So I'm doing. I'm bringing out a second book soon, which is like a fictional book. Like once again, I hesitate to use the word spiritual, but it's like a spiritual adventure, a bit of humor, astral stuff, that kind of stuff. But making it rather than a non-fiction book, which my original book was about my awakening. But this is a fiction book, a bit of fun. So I also like writing as well. So I think just being creative with it and just seeing what happens, you know?
Yeah, fantastic. And if people want to find out more about your work, are you still teaching the astral workshops at the moment? I know we've been through a pandemic, so workshops have.
Yeah, I'm doing smaller ones at home. Like I'm doing like 6 people one. Yeah. I've got one coming up in a few weeks, but I'm doing them a fair bit, like just a half a dozen people in, because I've got this room where I can do that. I've got an online one on my website. People can look at that, which is good. It's got like just the basic videos and step-by-step instructions. So yeah, I'm still doing that, and I do a lot of private, like Zoom is great. So I do like, you know, private consults with people who are not in Australia, just helping them, you know, maybe hone their. Everyone comes from a different perspective, so a lot of people. It is fantastic how many people are interested from all walks of life in astral. You know, and it's not just the astral thing; it's developing a lucid mind and maybe help with meditation as well. You know, yeah. And also, I've done a few.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, please. And you've also.
I don't know. I also like, you know, a few years ago, I started sometimes talking like to groups of people at events, like, you know, presentations on astral. And that was good fun too, reaching out a bigger number. So I think in the future, as the whole restrictions ease, I'll get back into, you know, just sharing this stuff to people, you know, in person, in bigger events again. Be good fun. Yeah.
Fantastic. Last question for you, Greg. With everything that we've covered today, which has been a fair bit, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
I will. I like you asked that question. And it's funny, you've drawn out the answer, which is a weird answer. So before I went to Spain, this was a dozen years ago. Yeah. Anyway, I was meditating one day and I felt this little weird movement in the back of the left of my head. And I came out of it and I said to my wife something, it felt pleasant, but it was like something shifted. And I said to my wife, something really weird has happened. And I couldn't actually put a sentence together. It was really weird. I couldn't speak like I am now. I was still doing a bit of music. It was kind of the tail end. I was doing Reiki, but kind of not really talking, and hadn't really spoke about the astral stuff, but was still doing a bit of music. Now, what I found was this. I would have to rehearse the names of my colleagues. I'd have to rehearse conversations that I was going to have that day so I could enter into conversation, because I literally couldn't put a sentence together. I had to find the word. Because of that experience, I became very quiet for a while. And when I did speak, I could only say what I meant. That meant I became belligerent in my old workplace because I just couldn't. The workplace, to me, because I didn't want to be there, became toxic. It wasn't toxic to others, but to me, because I didn't want to be there. And I became kind of belligerently honest. And that pushed me into doing just what I want to do. Only what I wish, what is authentic. And then I started to like myself again, because I was no longer in a toxic place that made me feel like a belligerent person, because I started not to like myself. So for some reason, I wanted to share that with people. Like, it's really curious what pulls you in that direction. But I think this sense of authenticity, it's so much more freeing just to be who you are, and just live that life. And I know it sounds simplistic and all that, but a lot of people aren't. So I guess that was really a curious experience because it was hilarious. I couldn't speak, and people thought Greg's gone off his nut, But someone said to me, who knew what I was doing, someone said, Greg, that's interesting. That's because you've been going astral. Therefore, because what did happen when I meditated, even now, there's like nothing going on. A deliciously dumb state where the narrator was kicked out of the office. So I think meditation is beautiful at kicking. So that was literally the narrator was kicked out, and it kind of left me floundering for a while because there was no commentary. Like there was no, don't do that. You should do this. Oh, you never do that. Don't do that. It was just like, okay, Greg can't speak. Okay, And so I wrote the book as a method of therapy because literally I thought I'll just write down my experiences because then I had to get from one end of the sentence to the other. That is hilarious. And that was my coming out. Otherwise I wouldn't have taught the whole, it's so bizarre. I mean, that storyline is so lame. You wouldn't script that because it's so lame, but that seems to be the way these realms work. They're just going to get you there however they can. Anyway.
That's a great place to end this show, Greg. Thank you. And it's definitely showed up in my life more. The closer I come to my own truth and live from that place, it changes your whole world. So yeah, absolutely. For everyone listening, I'll ensure that there's links in the show notes, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. All you need to do is just pause the podcast, scroll down below, and Greg's website will be there. And just say your website out loud, Greg, just for everyone listening as well.
Yeah, GregDoyle.com. So GregDoyleAstral.com. Yeah.
Beautiful. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for doing what you do and creating wondrous intrigue in your stories and journeys. And like I was saying, I'm halfway through your book as well, which I highly recommend for people to check out as well. It will definitely give you deeper insights into some of your experiences and the work that you put out there. So, Greg, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks so much, Guy. I've loved it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.